Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the next episode of Overcome Yourself, the podcast. As you know, my name is Nicole, and I'm so excited to be here today with Jessica. Now, Jessica is someone who is in my coaching group, and so we've had other guests. So she's like, I guess, a VIP guest because I do know her, and we've gotten to spend time together inside our own coaches group. And so I'm very excited to welcome Jessica. And so, Jessica, please introduce yourself. Let us know a little bit about who you are and who you help.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nicole. My name's Jessica. I'm a mindset transformation coach. The purpose of what I do is really to help people to um, rewire their mind and their nervous system for truly sustainable change. So it's getting, the mind, the body, the spirit, all of that working together so that you can actually create change that is lasting and get out of that like yo-yo cycle, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. And tell us a little bit about you and your story and how you've got into what you do today.
Oh, that is a story. It's like very much not linear. And that's one of the things that I love to share, just to, help people see that that's not a problem. Like that's, that can actually be a good thing. But yeah, so my educational background was actually in psychology. I'm very passionate about psychology. I love learning about myself and learning about other people and what makes people tick and, all of that kind of stuff. And so I've always been very passionate about, the concept of psychology. And then, I really zoned in on that throughout university where I wanted to get involved in all of that stuff. I was obsessed with Criminal Minds and Lie to Me, like those shows that are about like really understanding people and getting into the nitty gritty of like what makes them tick. So I was determined to go down that path. And then, I got into health and fitness and I realized, do I really want to spend my life working in spaces where I'm going to be focused on like the worst of the worst, like criminal justice system, like all of that kind of stuff. And it just didn't feel like it was calling to me anymore. I was really um, just loving the energy of being in the health and fitness space. And that's when I started getting into like just more positivity and all of that, like almost to the point of like toxic positivity. In the early stages, that definitely was part of it, like, the bypassing and stuff. And so then I kind of trickled into fitness coaching, not officially, like not personal training, but I was with Beachbody for a little stint and I was trying to do fitness coaching. I had a blog and I did challenges every month and I was doing that and I had so much fun and it was just motivational and inspirational. And so that was a big piece of my journey. And then I became very passionate about makeup and I started to incorporate the passion of helping women to feel just their most authentic, beautiful selves, from an external perspective. And then, I've always been very passionate about learning. That has always been something that's really been interesting for me. So I spent about a decade working for a global e-learning company. That was my corporate gig. So all these other things were kind of like little side hustles. I was for the bulk of the time that I was with this corporate e-learning company, I was basically like a coach for learning and development consultants or representatives or HR folks. So I was involved in helping them to understand what their goals and what their priorities were from a business standpoint so that I could help them navigate how to come make those goals and those business outcomes into reality through learning solutions. So it was kind of like a different angle, but I really enjoyed that. And I found that during the pandemic I started to come into the space of trauma awareness. I had my own experience with therapy. I had explored that before, and I just didn't really find that it worked for me, but I wanted to try it again. So I did. I got a lot of really, really great value from it. And I started doing some really deep inner work, in 2020. I think a lot of people can probably relate to that. 2020 brought up a lot of stuff for a lot of people. And that just kind of sent me into, this new space. I went into Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within, and it just kind of blew my mind a little bit because I started to see, okay, he's using psychology, he's using positivity. He incorporates fitness, like all of these different pieces, things that I am passionate about. I'm like, wait a minute, like I don't have to pick just one thing. All of these little pieces of my journey kind of tie together in a really cool way. And so that just showed me kind of like the art of what is possible or what could be possible for me. And that's when I started to think about maybe I should become a coach. Like maybe I should do something with this because I've always been, or I shouldn't say always, I had been for over a decade, I'd been coaching and I'd been doing these things and, sharing content, all of the things that paid coaches do, but I wasn't getting paid for it. I was just doing it. So I decided that I was going to stand in that and I was going to own it and I was just, gonna give it a shot. So I am really excited to be able to finally be in a space of making this what I do and what I share with the world because I feel like I've learned so much. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be here and have a chat with you and to give some value to all of your listeners.
I love that. And you said you're like, "Oh, I'm going to become a coach." And I was like, "But you were already coaching, so like you already are a coach." So it's just stepping
Right.
into that, right?
Exactly. It
And
was getting into the mindset because for so long, and I think a lot of people are struggling with that too right now. There's so many people that are being affected by layoffs. And that happened to me last year. I went through that myself and it was like, it was harder than I thought because for a while now I had been saying if it happens, then I'm going to take that as a sign that this is what I'm meant to do full time. Like I'm going to believe in myself. And so in a way, I didn't have that, like, I'm going to burn the boat. A lot of people say that I'm going to burn the boat. I like stability and safety and stuff like that. So for me, that wasn't something that I wanted to do. I wanted to, have that slow build initially. And so when I had my layoff come in, it was like jarring and completely abrupt. And my identity, I'd been with that company for almost 10 years. So my identity was attached to that. And it was so tough for me to navigate that initially. And so to come out of that and come into this space of like, no, like this is what I'm meant to do. This happened for me, not to me. This was a good thing. And so to finally be able to stand in that energy and to say, like, no, like, yes, it sucked. And it does. And it's totally fine to sit in your emotions when stuff like that comes up because, yeah, it hurts. And that, you got to work through those emotions. But like, just know that there is going to be a day where you're going to look back on that and you'll be like, okay, so this is why that had to happen because you're going to be in a completely different energy and it's going to be like a level up from where you used to be.
I love that. Um, One of the things that we were talking about in relation to this, and I know that you also got hurt along this process. And so you were able to relate to me just a little bit better. And when we were talking last time, we talked about the idea, something that's in my book, which you touched on another topic in my book about tying our identities to what we do. Because what happens when that thing's over? Like if you're tying your identity to being a mom, but what happens when the kids grow up and they go to college? Or if you're, tied in this and you get fired, well, then does everything, just throw it away? And no. um and so can you talk to us about that? And the other thing that we had mentioned, and because I think they might be a little bit related, is one of the chapters in my book talks about how motivation is a lie. And it doesn't just hit us out of nowhere, right? We were having a great conversation about this. So can you touch a little bit on both of those things for me?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think when it comes to like your having your personality and who you are tied to a certain thing, yeah, it's gonna hold you back. And, I think that it's really important for us to get very clear on what our identity is as a human being in and of ourselves. So, regardless of anybody else or anything else, that includes your kids, that includes your spouse, if you're married, or your partner, or, anything, any job, or even religion. I think, personally, like, yes, that plays in a role. If you're religious and stuff like that, that's going to be an important part of your identity, but also just getting clear on your values. And, like, people that aren't even religious, they have values. They still have values. They have things that are important to them that they care about. Like, I think that is really important so that you can navigate those waves as they come, because life is going to happen, to you and for you. But when it happens in the moment, you don't always see why it's happening for you. That comes later. And it can be really difficult sometimes to like see that, that silver lining in the moment because we're just in it. But I think that that's really important. It's just getting really clear on your identity. And I mean, that's a lifelong process because we're always growing and we're always evolving. So just, who am I right now? And a lot of people are struggling with that. Like I see that all over social media where people are like, going on healing journeys, or they're starting like a self-love journey. They're trying to learn to love themselves more. They're trying to learn who they are, like even just, that kind of thing. And that's something that I also had to experience because so many of us have learned to become what other people need of us to receive love and to receive attention. And that's what we learned when we were growing up, is that we had to do that. We had to put on a mask and become what, other people. So I used to say this, like I used to become like a chameleon. Like I would just pick up different pieces of what I thought that they wanted to see of me. And that wasn't me. So it was like this process of removing layers and unlearning things that weren't actually me, and kind of getting to the true authentic version of who I am and like what I'm here to do and all of that kind of stuff. And when it comes to the back piece, like I know you mentioned the injury, and honestly, like the timing is so suspicious of that. It just cracks me up because it happened right after my layoff. And I am a little bit woo-woo, so for anybody that's not, like, you can just kind of close your ears for a few seconds. But for me, like energetically, this was like the embodiment of me losing my stability, my job, the financial security, the paychecks,
Mhm.
all of that. It happened where, and the thing for me is like I've thrown my back out a few times before. I'm in my 30s. That happens apparently. um, so for me, like usually there's like a moment in time where it's like, uh-oh, I did something. Like I'll be doing an exercise and then I feel like a tinge in my back and I'm like, uh-oh. Like usually there's something. But this time there was nothing. There was no moments where I just realized, oh, that wasn't good. I'm probably going to be hurting for a bit. It just showed up out of seemingly nowhere. And so for me, it was really difficult to move through that. And yes, it did help me to relate to you. It helped me relate to my mom because my mom had a broken back. She had a fractured spine. And she was struggling day to day, like with extreme pain. And I didn't understand that. I thought she was, being a little bit dramatic. I was also a teenager in my defense at the time. But yeah, it just helped me to understand that because I was trying to figure out what's next for me. I was, redoing my resume, thinking about jobs, thinking like, should I do my business? Like all of these things were going through my mind all at once, and I was completely overwhelmed. Plus, I was working through the emotions of losing not just the job, but also a lot of friends. I had so like there's a lot of people locally to me. I literally I have like three different people who live within walking distance of me that I used to work with. So it's also that energy of like losing friendships because they're not in my orbit anymore. They're not in my space. Like I don't really interact with them the way that I used to. So it's just it was a loss bigger than just the job itself. It was the connections and the relationships and all of that kind of stuff went with it too. So for me, it was all of that kind of combined, and it showed up in my body physically. So that's kind of like when I talk about embodiment, it's like the body keeps the score. It really does. Like when you're dealing with difficult emotions and it's like overwhelming, it shows up physically in the body. And for me, it was in my root. It was in like right at the base of my spine and in my hips. And it took me like 4 months to come out of that. So I was working through all of this stuff while dealing with that. I had to completely change the way that I lived. I had to buy a standing desk converter, which I now love and use all the time because I physically couldn't sit and I had to work. I had to, so I just had to figure stuff out. But yeah, it was extremely challenging. And it does tie into motivation because it's funny, like I laughed and I actually did find the old blog post because I told you, you said motivation is a lie. And I had an old blog post from probably 2018 or something, and it was motivation is a myth. So I've been saying the same thing for a long time. So you and I are definitely on the same wavelength when it comes to that because we don't just have motivation. Like it's not motivation that drives us, it's the little actions that we take. It's, and that's one of the things that I've found to be extremely helpful is to make note of things that I'm doing so that I can honor those achievements. And so, one of the things that I did when I was initially trying to kind of get things together for my business was I started making note and keeping track of all of the little steps that I was doing each day. Because a lot of the time, what happens is we get to the end of the week and we're like, gosh, I'm so not motivated. I didn't get anything done this week. I was super lazy and yada, yada, yada. And it's just like when you look back, if you start tracking these things, if you write down the little action steps and the big actions, like all of the things that you do that are in with the intention to move you forward toward a goal, whatever that goal may be, it's going to give you motivation. So we don't naturally have motivation, but like we build it, we create it. It's like a co-creation process. So, and for anyone that has ADHD, I struggle with that too. I've shared a tip that I find really helpful for me. If I need to clean the bathroom or if I need to clean the kitchen, I don't say, okay, let's go clean the bathroom. If I don't feel like I have the energy or I feel like cleaning the bathroom, then I say, okay, we're just going to clean the sink. But once you clean the sink, you get that dopamine hit and you're like, I feel good. I got this accomplished. And you're like, well, I'm already here. I've got the cleaning solution. I got this stuff. I might as well do the toilet too. And then it's like, well, I'm here. I might as well get, and you build on that. And it just, before you know it, you've got a bunch of stuff done and it feels really, really good. So that is like one of the things that I find really, really potent is like sometimes we set the goal a little bit too big. It's good to have big goals, but it's also important to break them down into smaller goals so that we're able to then see the progress. Because when we just have a big goal, it feels like I'm I don't know what the word I'm looking for.
Feels big.
Impossible. Yeah,
Yeah,
it feels big,
impossible.
unreachable. That's the word I was searching for. It feels unreachable or unattainable because you set the goal so high that especially if, it's something that you maybe haven't done before. You're like, I don't know if I can actually do this. But if you do little bite-sized pieces, every time you do one of those steps, you're going to feel good. It's going to release happy chemicals in your brain. You're going to get the dopamine hit. You're going to, it's going to give you motivation so that you're like, okay, I'm making progress. And it's okay to rest. Like a lot of us feel like we're not doing enough. The world is crazy. Like, let's just be real. Things are nuts right now all over the place. And so people are struggling. And when we're struggling, we can find ourselves in this space and energy of just surviving. We're not thriving, we're surviving. We're just getting through the day, barely, a lot of the time for a lot of people. And so you're allowed to rest. Rest is productivity. Like you need to be able to rest in order to be able to show up and do the things that you want to do and that you need to do to move forward towards your goals.
I love that. And our coach always says it, rest is an income producing activity. You have to do it. Um,
Yeah.
right? And it's so true. Like with motivation in my book, I talk about how it's kinetic energy. And all that means is it's like in the reserve tank. And the only way that we can access that is exactly what you said, is by taking a small action. And then boom, exactly what you said, the dopamine hits and you're like, oh, let me wash 1 cup. Well, my hands are wet. I've got the sponge. I already used the soap. I'm already here. Let me just wash this plate. You know what? Look, there's only 3 things left. Oh, boom, all the dishes are done, or whatever it is. Even with this podcast, like we are recording podcast, I don't know, it's 100 and something. And I haven't even published. I haven't even gotten to 100 published. So behind the scenes with us guys. But when I was starting, my goal was to get to 100. But I couldn't sit down and record 100 episodes in a day. Like, I don't think there's enough
Mhm.
time in the day for that, right? And like, I can't even upload that many episodes at once, right? Like, you have a limit. But one by one, I sat down and recorded 30 minutes at a time. I got to meet awesome people, and like, we're over 100 now. And so in the beginning,
Congratulations.
it felt impossible, right? Thank you. But now it's kind of like, oh, so yeah, we got 100. Let's go for 1,000. And that feels really big. But you know what? One at a time.
Exactly.
What?
And we make the
Yeah.
rules. That's another thing. It's like we make things so much harder for ourselves sometimes. It's like why we feel like almost like, well, I can't do this. It's like, for example, I just saw a post earlier and I can't remember all of the details, but in a nutshell, it was talking about how people they have these rules. It's like, well, do the things that you wanted to do when you were a kid or that you couldn't do when you're a kid. There's no rule. Like if you're with a group and you're going by McDonald's and it's like, oh, I'd really like to have a McFlurry. Pull in. Like there's no parents there to say that you can't. You know what I mean? Like that was kind of the energy of the post. Or if you're at like a museum and it's $3 to go see a butterfly exhibit and you love butterflies. If you have the $3, go see the exhibit. It's like there's these unseen rules that our minds have that have been conditioned into us that like, oh, we can't do that. It's like, why not? Like you get to create the rules. You get to, and the same is true with like household stuff. If you don't have the energy to do the dishes, but you have a dishwasher and it's like, well, I can't put the dishes in the dishwasher until like I scrub them because otherwise they won't come out clean. Run it twice.
I read that. I love it.
Yeah, like I've seen that post many times and I just love it too. I wish I knew who the original author was, but that's like such a big thing. It's like, who says you can't run it twice? You know what I mean? Like we create these rules for ourselves. So when it comes to like motivation and what we were talking about, like the individual bite-sized goals and taking note of all of the steps, I will literally have already done a thing and I will write it down just so that I can check it off. Totally, I totally do that because it's like I get that little dopamine hit and I want to know that I've done it. And so like I will actually write stuff down that I've already done and I will check it off. And I used to do that in Asana all the time when I was working for my former company. I used Asana and every so often when you mark a task complete, it would send like a unicorn across the screen or like
Yeah.
some pretty thing and like I just loved it. So yeah, like we get to create the rules and a lot of the time our rules are make it really hard for us to be able to maintain motivation. So make it easy for yourself. If your goal is to like your goal was 100 podcast episodes. Well, make it to just do one podcast episode in 1 week or something like that. Make it have your longer goals, but also have your shorter goals so that you're able to be able to make some progress because progress is what creates that motivation and that drive. And it's what's going to propel you forward to keep you committed.
Yeah, and it's what I can control, right? I can
Hmm.
control recording the next episode. I don't know what's going to happen with the other 97 that I've got left, but I can do this one, right? And so I love that so much. And one of the scripts that and just since we were talking about this in my book, one of the scripts that I discovered playing in my head, right, is like, you're not getting anything done. And I realized that I would be sitting at my computer in my PJs, for example, right, which is something that I used to pray for. I used to be like, man, I wish I could just stay home and be in my PJs and be working and get paid instead of having to like dress up and come do all this. But I'd be sitting there and I would be typing out on my computer and I'd be writing for like 6 hours to get this done. And then I'd get up and be like, oh my God, I didn't do anything today. what? Right? And you have this little voice that's like, oh, you didn't do anything today. Like, it doesn't matter that you washed the dishes, that you swept the floor, that you packed lunches for the kids, that you took them, to all their practices, that you made dinner and you actually had it on the table by 7, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, all those little things that you did, and you don't give yourself credit for them. And you're like, I didn't do anything. And so that is such a big deal, is to really give yourself credit. Like, look back and be like, okay, realistically, I didn't post on social media. I didn't post 10 times, but it's because I was doing 47 other things. So realistically, like,
Mhm.
I literally just didn't have time to do this. Right? And it just takes
Yes.
being honest with ourselves, right?
Yeah, we overestimate how much we can do in a very short span of time. So, to that point, it's almost like, when I was going through kind of trying to figure all of this stuff out and I started tracking my achievements and all of the things that I was doing, what I found really helpful was to create like a little bit of a checklist of like, what is the most important thing? If I can only do like 1 to 3 things, what is absolutely like a non-negotiable needs to happen today? And then I would have the rest of my list underneath. And as long as I got those first, like that was a rule that I created for myself. As long as I got the non-negotiables done, if, all of the other things got pushed to tomorrow, that's fine. I was okay with that. Yes, like if I got more done, it would be great. But like, let's be real, life happens, things happen. And I think it's really important for us to be able to take that step back and to, to be able to prioritize, to say, okay, these have to be done today and to note that, because otherwise if you've got so much on your list and you're not prioritizing them, then that's when things fall through the cracks that are actually important to you, and that's when you're going to feel worse if you miss those things. So I think that can be a really important distinction too, is just making sure that you're prioritizing, you're getting those high ticket things done first. And also, like, to your point, when you were saying like I did all of like 6 hours worth of work, but then I felt like I got nothing done. I actually just started using a tool called Clockify, because I wanted to see, just I was feeling very similar. Like I feel like I'm not doing enough. But I've learned to question that when that stuff comes up. So for me, I was like, okay, we're going to test this. And so what I started doing is when I sit down to work, if I'm working on web stuff, if I'm working through my accelerator, if I'm working through anything that's related to my business, then I track it in little project folders in Clockify, and I'm keeping a track of the hours, the time spent in different projects. And that has been so helpful for me. And I don't have a partnership with Clockify. It's free. I've just been using it. And I just started using it recently. I've been finding that so, so helpful because it's giving you proof. It's giving you social proof. And that's one of the things that I love, is just a lot of the time we have these like negative mindsets about ourselves, and like, I'm a procrastinator. I do this, or I'm this. And whatever we say after I am becomes a belief. But is it actually true? And so that's one of the things that I think is really important, is to challenge that. How do you know is it's true? Like, think about that and then go into, is there any proof that disputes that? Because there's a lot of the time we have these things that we believe about ourselves, but if we look back in the past, we've embodied the complete opposite of that energy in different situations. So it's just, how do I invite more of that part of myself forward? And how do I overcome that part that is doing the thing that I don't want to do, and overcome that mindset that I am a procrastinator, or I am this, or whatever that is for you. So again, that ties back into identity. What's important to you? What are your values? Who are you really? And any of those negative things, any of those negative beliefs that you have, question them. Don't just take them as fact, like question them and determine, is this actually true? Because I bet you're going to find proof somewhere in your history that that's actually not true, that you've learned that somewhere, or that somebody told you that you were that thing and you internalized it.
And whatever you like tell your brain, for lack of better words, your brain is going to find evidence for.
Hmm.
So if you say that thing, right, that's one of the other things and I think it was Tony Robbins that talked about the importance of vocabulary and
Yep.
really thinking about those words, like when those come up, exactly what you said, where's the evidence? Like, let's think about the evidence and let's think of the opposite evidence. And there's usually a lot more, but you just haven't been looking at it. Um, and to tie it all back together, what it made me think of was, again, the importance of rest, of leaving open space in our calendars. We need that. Tim
Hmm.
Ferriss talks about one of the most important things that he does, right? In finding, we have to find the big domino. How do we get to the biggest domino that's going to help us knock everything else down? And we're not going to find the big domino doing a bunch of stuff. I'm just going to do something so I can feel busy. No, you have to stop everything. You have to give your mind, the most powerful machine that you have, space to process and to think about these things and to think through the scenarios, right? And the only way that happens is through rest. And so even when you take time to productively rest, and I mean like logging off, not being on your cell phone, like being out in nature, grounding, like taking time with your family, not thinking about, oh my God, when's the next podcast coming out? Or, oh, I have a client. No, 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 none of that, right? Just being off and like being human, like actually being outside of the matrix that is technology and interacting with the trees and, doing all that wonderful stuff. Well, maybe not for you because you said it was like negative something right now. And so my heart goes out to you because that's terrible coming to you from Miami. I'm thinking about going to the beach. So I guess that's why I keep saying going outside. But yeah, but taking time off and just giving our brain the opportunity to do those things. So as we wrap up, can you let us know how we can stay in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on social media. So uh, Jessica JM Coaching. So I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I'm going to be interacting there a lot more over the coming months. And so you can find me in any of those places and spaces. And of course, I'm going to be sending you some links to some cool things that people can leverage. I've got a little achievement tracker that I'm excited to share with everybody. We talked about that a little bit, in terms of that activity that I was doing, and something else that ties into our conversation that I might think about creating and throwing in for them. I found a lot of value doing just a habit tracker. It was very, very simple. It was just a grid. You put in, the habits that you want to do and you check them off. And I would have like morning stuff and evening stuff so that I would knock out like check marks first thing in the morning. That just like, my self-care stuff. So what I was doing, if I start the day with a meditation, just a 10-minute one just to get me grounded in my own space and energy. I do a workout. I get ready for my day. So that's like my me time. Like that's how I start my day. And it just makes me feel so much more energized to go into the rest of my day. That's me. You need to find what works for you. But I find having that checklist just made it really, really helpful for me to acknowledge what I'm doing, not just toward my goal, but also just for myself. Because I didn't track business stuff in that tracker. I tracked my own personal well-being goals and the things that I wanted to do for me to show up fully in the energy I wanted. So that was like my health, that was my mindfulness, like all of those kinds of habits, things that I wanted to track. So I might have to think about creating something like that for everybody too, because that ties into all of our stuff that we were talking about today too. And I'm creating a quiz right now. I'm actively in the process of creating a quiz. I'm in the early stages, so I'm not going to give out too many details. But I will be sharing a link for that. It'll be ready by the time this podcast episode airs. So I'll be sharing all of that with you so that you can make this available for all of the listeners.
That is amazing. And everything that you mentioned, like the stuff that you mentioned, that's what I consider success habits, right? Because it doesn't matter what you do, you need to drink water, you need to move your body, you need to have some kind of spiritual practice where you're meditating or you're breathing, you're grounding, something psychological, I don't care what it is, right? But we all have these underlying things that help us perform better, setting our values, resting. We've all got to do that. Doesn't matter what your job is, if you're a mom, if you're a child, I don't care. These are all things we've all got to do, right? And so I think that is just so important, and I love that. And final tip. Do you have any final tips for the audience before we sign off?
Yeah, I would say just understand that if you feel like you're, stuck in this energy that you don't want to be in, what I found really helpful, a lot of people try to think like, they think what their goals are and stuff like that. And they try to just, people are, visualization is such a powerful thing right now. People are talking about a lot. I actually have aphantasia. So for me, I don't actually get the visualizations. Visualization meditations drive me crazy because I can't actually visualize. I can't see pictures. I think in like thoughts. So I think if you get into that energy and that space of like, I don't really know, what I found really helpful is to think about you have like if your goal is something that maybe a longer term thing, like in the next year or 5 years or whatever, think about you being in that space. Like think it's already a year later, it's already 5 years later, whatever that may be for you, whatever makes sense for you. And then think about what you would feel like if you already achieved that goal. How would you feel like in your body? Like, would you be excited? Would you be joyful? What would that life look like if you achieved that goal? What would be different? Would you be in a different home? Would you have different people in your life? Would you look different? What would that look like to you? And just get really, really clear on that. And if you can even do it like silently, like a lot of people like to journal, and that's awesome. Like if that's you, my trainer, he likes to say, as you write, you invite. And so when you're writing and journaling, like that can be a really, really powerful tool. You might remember things a lot more and have it more ingrained. But at the same time, like if you're not a journaling person, then you can also just do it quietly, silently. You can do both, like whatever makes sense for you. Throw on some like meditation music and then just like get quiet, get grounded, and just think about it. Close your eyes and just allow yourself to just explore and think and guide yourself through that process of thinking all of those things, and let yourself feel into those emotions that might come up of like, oh my gosh, like I did this. This is great. And whatever comes up, note that and allow yourself to feel into it, because as you start to allow yourself to imagine what that life, that version of you, and that goal achievement actually looks and feels like, you make it more real to yourself. So you make it possible for you to be able to believe that it is possible. Because otherwise, like without that belief, we tend to self-sabotage so much more.
Mhm.
But if you create that, that visualization or just that, mental picture of thoughts or whatever, you get really crystal clear on what that actually looks like and feels like, you're so much more likely to achieve that goal because you're going to believe that it's possible. Your mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's not. So when you are, even just the action of smiling makes you like, if you laugh and you start to like, when you watch TV and you laugh, sometimes that just makes you feel happier. If you're like completely depressed and you start to laugh, it just creates that chemical in your brain that makes you feel good. So your mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's not. So when you do that visualization exercise and you look like you're like at that place and you look backward, it allows you to think, okay, well, what are the steps that got me here? And that way, from that space, you're able to start planning and start taking those actions. It just makes it a little
Tiny,
easier.
tiny, tiny actions, but taking actions nonetheless. But yes,
Exactly.
bringing it down into the smallest block. I love that. Thank you so much, Jessica. This has been amazing. And we will see you guys next time on the next episode of Overcome Yourself, the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for being here.